Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Take Human Action PA. We're on episode 23 now. I'm Galvin here again, and got another co-host for this week. Previous guest joining us now as a co-host, Regina Badger. How are you doing?
Hi, guys. How are you?
What's going on with you? Anything new?
Yeah, a lot of fun projects going on. If anyone hasn't met me before, I am the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania's issue coalition chair. And we've got a lot of really fun things going on as far as hitting some different issues. Right now with Defend the Guard and some decrim nature things going on, which I might get into later. But yeah, we're slowly moving and grooving. And if you want to join the committee, hit me up. I need all the manpower I can get.
And how can people hit you up?
You can email me at regina.badger@protonmail.com because my LP email isn't working right now. But I can help you get set up with the party. I can help you get set up with the committee. And just, see where you fit.
Yeah, we'll definitely get there. Things are pretty crazy right now with election season coming to a close. By the time we do our next episode, that'll be it. But yeah, now that I mentioned that, let me go through the announcements I had real quick. So, two things. First off, after the membership changes for the seasoning requirement for the state convention for the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania that we passed last March, the new requirement says you must join as a member, I think it was 4 to 5 months ahead of time. So the dates are tomorrow, November 4th through December 4th. You have to join if you're not already a member, you have to join or make sure you renew as a member sometime within that time frame. After that, if you have not become a dues paying member of the LPPA at that point, then you will not be eligible to vote at the convention. So make sure you do that. Just go to lppa.org and you can re-up your membership. The other thing I'll say is Election Day is November 8th, and they're always looking for more volunteers for any of the candidates that we've interviewed up to this point, among others. They're all looking for help at the polls. So if you're able to spend any time at all, even if it's only a couple hours, we'll put a link in the episode description for a form you can fill out, and the candidates and the volunteers already working with them will reach out to you to make sure you get trained and set something up. Anything else you want to add, Regina, before we bring our guest on?
No, I think you got it all.
Oh, by the way, I think you have a request for someone to join the committee, or someone that's expressed interest. So send them
Yes.
Yeah. So send them a direct message afterwards.
I will.
All right. So our guest for tonight is a candidate for state rep out of Adams County. His district covers most of Adams County. He's been in the party for the past several years. He served as a chair of Adams County, I believe, currently. And he recently had a debate performance alongside the Democrat and Republican candidates. So plenty to talk about here with Neil Belliveau. How are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing well. So not everybody here might know you. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got into the ideas of liberty.
So my name's Neil Belliveau, obviously, like you said, running in District 91 here in Adams County. I'm kind of the weird one. I got involved back in 2016 when Gary Johnson was running for president. I was pretty much apolitical up until that time for most of my life. And I saw those two horrible choices we had with Trump and Clinton. And I was like, I had enough. So I started just looking around, and I don't remember how I came across Gary Johnson and kind of looking into what he was running on and kind of bought into at least his version of liberty. And at the time I lived out in California. So you know how the government out there is horrid, and it was a fresh light to me. So I kind of got involved there, voted for Gary Johnson, kind of joined the National Party then, and then I was out in California for a couple more years until I moved to Pennsylvania, I think around 2018. And at some point, I found the Mises Caucus somewhere along that time, and the Jacob Hornberger campaign, and kind of radicalized me along that way to really get more involved. And I joined a state party in Pennsylvania and kind of just snowballed from there, getting involved. When I moved into Pennsylvania, I lived in York County, tried to get involved in York a little bit. And then once I moved to Adams County, there was no Adams County Libertarian Party here. Started this chapter with myself and a few other people. Like you mentioned earlier, became chair and kind of just elected my second term there, and just it's been history ever since.
All right. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Gary Johnson campaign, because like I'd been a libertarian for longer, but that was around the time I joined the Libertarian Party, when it seemed like the party was getting traction. So you're not alone in that sense. I joined around the same time. I'd even met Gary Johnson a little while before that, which added to the whole thing. This was before he actually announced. So, that it definitely gave me it definitely gave me a sense that things were picking up. Like now I have like a little bit more of a different vision, and it sounds like you might as well, for what the best direction is for some of the higher profile races. But we'll definitely cover that as we go along here. I think the last thing as far as the background goes then is what led you to run for state rep. So how did that come up?
Obviously, being chair and having a new Adams County party, I was looking for someone to run. No one else wanted to step up, and I debated it, and finally said, you know what, I bit the bullet and I did it. I'm an introvert, so it was a hard decision for me, but you know what, if you don't push yourself and go outside your comfort zone, you don't change. So I decided to run, and to me it was more of a marketing opportunity to let, hey, there's a Libertarian Party here in Adams County. There's over 300 registered libertarians, so what better way to reach out to them and kind of let them know, hey, I'm here to represent you and give you a voice.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the comment down there, but I mean that already speaks volumes. Just nobody else is, raise your taxes, raise your taxes. I'm the only person that won't raise your taxes. I mean, if that doesn't highlight the contrast, then I don't know.
Pretty much it.
I don't know what does.
Pretty much it. I mean, everyone was, talking about the debate there. All the issues about possibly raising taxes, they talked about raising. I was like, no, no more raising. We've got to find ways to stay within our means, and especially with the vehicle tax, the gas tax, with all that money being siphoned off into the state police and other things, it's ridiculous. And I was like, no, it can't be done this way.
Yeah, for sure. So Regina, I know you had a few questions in mind. You want to take it in more of like the issues direction and connect it to what you're working on. So did you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. So my one of my bigger projects right now is we are working on Defend the Guard, especially with the news that I don't know if everyone saw, but we do officially have U.S. troops over in Ukraine. And, I think right now it's more important than ever to educate about Defend the Guard. Neil, just like what are some of your thoughts with what's going on there and like with our veterans?
Yeah, that's been kind of one of my main talking points, especially when I was out collecting signatures. That was one of the things I brought up to everyone, and it's interesting for the people who are not familiar with it and some of the pushback we get, especially on social media. There was a post a couple weeks ago with the PA National Guard being sent out, and from everything we looked at internally, it was not voluntary. So we're like this perfect defend the guard moment, and everyone was just like, "You don't know what you're talking about." It's they can go and they're serving our country. They know what they signed up for, and everyone's like clearly have no idea what defend the guard is and didn't take any time to read the links or anything like that. So
Well,
it's
could you
kind of,
could you explain what it is for us, for people that don't know? Defend the Guard.
yeah, it's pretty much it our holds our Congress to the Constitution, because right now they delegated the powers to the president to kind of send the National Guard wherever he wants, and this returns that power and make sure it's done by the Congress for a declaration of war, rather than passing it off and just using it as his personal army, the president's personal army. So it's the Constitution is, if we don't enforce it, it's just words on paper, and this is a perfect opportunity for us to kind of push back towards honoring what's written in the Constitution.
Yeah, and that's one thing I particularly like about it, because you can pass it at the state level, and you don't even need to take it to the federal level. Like if you pass this bill in Pennsylvania, then it protects the Pennsylvania National Guard from being deployed overseas or anywhere else outside of the state, short of a declaration of war.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I particularly like about it. Now, let's see. How about education? So, what are your stances on education in the state of Pennsylvania, and what policies would you recommend?
Well, ultimately, I think we get to the point of separating school and state. Um, it's the amount of money we spend for public education is crazy. I think we're eighth in the nation for student funding, and it just goes to waste. Most of that goes to administration fees and whatnot, and our testing scores are completely lowering. So it's time to make a change, and it's an uphill battle, but we got to break the school unions and the Democrats on their side, and allow the money to fall as student, I think, is to begin with, and that will help obviously introduce competition with charter schools, private schools, and homeschooling to kind of compete with the local schools and kind of get their spending in line, and improve that overall education, and not just lock people into local schools and have them just flounder, not having a good education.
Right. So the current system is that you move to a house in a certain township, or whatever the dividing line is in your area, and you're essentially confined to either send your child to the public school, or pay to send them to a private school. You can't send them to a public school in another district, and they're usually funded by expensive property taxes that regardless of whether you're using the schools or not, go directly to the public school that's in your district. So what alternative would you propose to that if someone asked you?
Well, with the property taxes, I think at some point, if you allow this, the money that falls students as school choice, that will result in the property taxes going down in the area. And as we introduce more competition, education gets cheaper, we can get to a point where we can eliminate the property tax and not necessarily just shuffle the chairs on the deck what some of the property tax legislation is floating out there. But the students, they're locked into, those zip codes. Students should be able to, go to whatever school they want or another public school in the area. And as long as they have the transportation to get around, they should not be confined to the zip code, like you said.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Neil. You want to ask the next one, Regina?
Yeah. Is there anything as far as Second Amendment or anything in your county that you notice that you think you can, bring to the table?
The PA Constitution is clear, shall not be infringed. Or, yeah. So the wording might be a little bit different, but yeah, I mean, we should not be restricted in any ways. Adams County is a very rural area, so we don't have a lot of gun issues. So a lot of stuff that obviously a top-down legislation is going to come down is geared towards, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, or whatnot, and that just infringes on the rights of Adams County residents, and it should not be infringed. It's they're only hurting law-abiding citizens, and the criminals and the gun runners or whatnot, illegal guns are still going to happen, despite how many regulations and restrictions they put in.
Right. So that brings up another interesting subject. So Second Amendment sanctuaries. Well, most people are familiar with the concept of, immigration sanctuary city, essentially, where usually the large Democrat cities will nullify, in effect, federal immigration regulations and protect illegal immigrants from being deported. Likewise, Second Amendment sanctuaries. There are certain areas, I don't know of any in Pennsylvania specifically, but I know in other states, there's localities where the local law enforcement will not cooperate with any federal law enforcement that's coming in to enforce federal level gun legislation that they deem to be unconstitutional. So what's your view on Second Amendment sanctuaries, and in either instance, what kind of action could you take as a state representative to protect gun rights?
That's kind of hard because, at the mercy of the whole legislature, but I'm all for, nullifying bad federal government edicts that are handed down. I'll do everything I can to promote and educate and, get any type of legislation across the line that will, not infringe on private people's, gun ownership.
All right. Thanks, Neil. So I'll get into another subject then. So we talked about it a little bit in regards to the taxes already, but there's more and more concerns about energy and the environment, balancing those things out. Like California is on the way to outlawing electric vehicles, and there's people concerned we're burning too much fossil fuels, and a lot of things play into it. Like the gas prices have been going up too, and Pennsylvania has maybe among the highest or the highest in terms of gas taxes and tolls. So when you look at this situation as a whole in Pennsylvania, what do you support, and what kind of actions would you take at the state legislature?
So the gas tax is totally high. I think we are like top 4 or 5 in the nation as far as gas tax goes. And there's some from my debate or whatever, this was one of the topics, and both candidates talked about the miles of roads in Pennsylvania is some of the highest. So, that kind of correlates with that. But, the problem is that percentage, like 40% of that is taken off into, the state police and other fundings. And according to the PA Constitution, all that money needs to go to roads and bridge maintenance. And they've just every year completely taken more money off and kind of send it to these other projects. And a few years ago, they even raised the gas tax to try and help cover some of that. But again, when they keep sending that money to other programs or whatnot, it just neglects the roads and bridges that we've seen here, especially, what was it, a year ago where that bridge collapsed? I think it was in
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh. So, and that's total neglect on our state for not, as much money as they're taking to be able to do that. Now, on top of that, with the taxes, and then like with the energy crisis that we're probably going to be entering, we totally with our green energy policy stuff, we've cut back on our domestic production, cut that out, thinking we're going to turn green and electric power cars. But ultimately, what we've done is turn reliant on other countries for our energy, like Russia. So reducing the production, relying on other countries, is just going to continue to crawl up the pricing. And what we need to do is just, I think we can get to, green energy responsibly, but the rush to cut back on our domestic production is going to crush us and turn fuel pricing like it is in Germany or UK, where it has skyrocketed even before all this. I got a friend from Germany, and they pay 3-4 times as much as for gasoline for the car already. I can't imagine what they pay for now with the issues that they got with, relying on Russia so much. But, we've got to increase domestic production, at least to make up that loss in, what we're relying so much for outside of our country.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a pretty wide topic, and I'd say you hit on most of it. I think it's safe to assume you wouldn't oppose banning or phasing out gas-powered vehicles as well. Am I right on that?
Banning, like California? No.
Yeah.
No, we can't use government to ban stuff or whatever. I think we need to take a free market approach to let that stuff phase out. If it's good technology and it's popular, it'll phase out. Look at anything else, DVDs, VHS. Eventually it will phase out. And if we're putting so much into the government choosing winners and losers inside this green energy with, electric cars or whatnot. I mean, there's a technology, I think, what was it, just a couple of weeks ago, I saw some news article for hydrogen cars. What company is going to produce a hydrogen car or extend that research when they can just turn around and build a battery car and just get massive handouts from the government? Where's the innovation? So yeah, we've completely taken a wrong approach, I think, with moving towards a greener future.
Yeah, feels like there has been virtually, well, not actually zero innovation, but much less of a push for innovation, because everybody's just at best trying to keep up with the next regulation, and at worst lobbying the government for favors. So either way, they're not really benefiting the consumer.
No, and that's just going to make everything expensive too. So which maybe we'll figure out some point, but I don't have high hopes.
Yeah, well, we'll see. So Regina, you got something else?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll hit on the topic that I'm most familiar with, which is obviously going to be decrim nature. Um, in the city of Pittsburgh, cannabis is essentially decriminalized to where it's not legal yet, but it's essentially the lowest priority, and you essentially get a citation and a ticket. And recently in the news, now all across PA, drug testing, um, like different forms of drug testing are now all legal, which a lot of people didn't realize that things like fentanyl strips, or like, I hate to use this example, but similar test tubes to what like the cops use when they pull you over and they test what you have on you. Um, Everyone should actually have access to that, to make sure that, no matter what obviously with, our stance as a libertarians, whatever you put in your body is your business, but you should do it as safely as possible. And the Issue Coalition right now is working on decriminalizing psychedelics as well. But, would you consider bringing any sort of decriminalizing nature, to your county?
For sure. I'm under the belief that all drugs should be decriminalized and be treated as a health issue rather than a criminal issue. We put too many people in jail. And again, it's our own body. We should be able to decide what we ingest and do that and do it safely and not be under, pressure to, possibly be arrested and our life's ruined just because we decided to do something. But yeah, I mean, full decriminalization, let people out of jail. I debated with the Democrat and Republican opponent about marijuana. I didn't go the full decrim route, but they used, they were somewhat for recreational use, but they stopped that. Well, we got to change the DUI laws first. And like, that's an excuse, because if you try and change the DUI laws first before, decriminalizing something, you get complete pushback from the state police and maybe the attorney general or whatever, and you'll never advance that. It's just an excuse not to do it. And just decriminalize it, treat it as a health issue, and let people live free. And I think you look at countries like what was it? I think it was Portugal or whatever, who decriminalized all drugs and treated it as a health issue, and they saw some good effects with that. Obviously, emptying of jails and reducing the business aspect of prisons, and getting people help that they need rather than putting them in jail.
All right. Do you want to follow up on that at all, Virginia?
No, I mean, I think you hit a lot of good points there. It's really funny to me that that's their only counter argument, is we need to change the DUI laws, when in the meantime, you can walk into a gas station and you can get like malt liquor at this point. Like, I've seen like Mad Dog, I've seen like small bottles of, you know, like Fireball and stuff. And it's really funny to me that that's their excuse of why something that grows out of the ground and has less side effects and is definitely, I would say, can make you less reckless. Yeah, it's just kind of funny how they fall back on some like really strange things like that.
Yeah, well, prohibition, as we're learning, is always fails. We saw it with alcohol, and it'll eventually happen with marijuana and psychedelics eventually. Once more, we've gotten all this research over the past few years on how much it helps with PSD and other mental health issues. And the way our country's going with the mental health issues, we need to find some good ways to help with that, and people alleviate the issues rather than pharmaceuticals, where it taking those things just ruins people's lives too, just because I can take it, it's legal, but mentally it just makes them even worse. And we need to find better options, and what better than natural products that grown right out of the ground.
Yeah, true enough. So we touched on the debate a couple times that you had with the Democrat and the Republicans. So before we keep going with the issues, why don't you tell us about that? Like how it got set up, how you got in that debate, the details of who was there and how long was it? The kind of topics that were covered. Did you have any conversations with them, before or after, like the other candidates? Like, just tell us everything.
Yeah, I kind of want to know like any like really good, like you were saying, you kind of brought that up with the marijuana, and that was like their fallback. Like, is there any other ones that kind of stumped them on your end?
So I was involved with two debates. One with WGAL, which was obviously the news station. They've done a series of debates, and then the one at Gettysburg College, which was the longer form one. WGAL was a quick two question deal between the three of us. Real quick. Let's see. It talked about, it was the marijuana and then road taxes. The highlight out of there was my opponent, Dan Mao, who's the incumbent for 16 years, was in, all for, raising that tax. And, I brought up the point that was outside of the PA's constitution of putting that money elsewhere. He was like dismissive of it. It's like, oh, people won't mind, that's going to the police for safety. So it, again, the PA constitution is arbitrary. As long as everyone's okay with it, I guess it's okay not to follow. And then, we kind of see that a lot now with even the United States Constitution just becoming arbitrary. So that was a quick one. That was on a Tuesday. I believe the Gettysburg one was the long form one, which was at the college, and that ranged a wide variety of topics of issues, ranging from what was it? I think it talked about education. Oh man, what else did they talk about? Abortion, all the PA hot topics or whatever. I can't recall them from the top. And a lot of their responses were just the status typical topics, and everything I kind of talked against was like, well, we need to, take a look at where this money is going, how it's being spent, how it's infringing on people's rights, and why can't people, make their own choices? Why do they need, a top-down government telling them what to do? Another question was about COVID that was discussed. It was talking about the lockdowns and whatnot. The typical Democratic talking point, if it says one lies, whatever. The Republican Dan was like, it was a horrible thing. Wolf sent, seniors to death in the nursing homes. I got up there and called it one of the worst human tragedies in our lifetime, just because of what it did to our youth, and what we're seeing now with excess deaths, the supply chain inflation, drug use, the skipped cancer screenings and whatnot. So I don't think we've experienced everything from the COVID lockdowns yet. That's more to come. But with that debate, my main goal out of there was to have a strong opening and closing statement, where the opening statement was where I called out one of my main talking points that I've talked to everyone about was reform PA's state legislature. Because right now we have one of the most expensive legislatures in the country that works full time, and at least performing one. So, we need to see that turned into a part-time legislature. And they make over, I believe they make $97,000 a year, soon to be $100,000 a year. And my pitch to them was to, make that part-time and cut that compensation in half, saving PA residents over $9 million a year, which could easily be help alleviate, education, any other issues. And then finally, my closing out of that was to hit on Defend the Guard, where I asked both candidates to come out and support that. And, if it is introduced into one of our upcoming sessions, to support it. Right now, only the Democrat came out and said they're interested in learning more. And the Republican, I don't think has said anything about that to this point, or saying they were interested. So I think that's will be one of the things after this race that I'll be pushing more, saying, hey, let's get this thing introduced.
Yeah, that's the one thing I'm wondering about. So for a lot of the people in the audience, that would have been their first time hearing a lot of what you said, like Defend the Guard and possibly some of the things you were saying about COVID as well. So did you get a chance to talk to anyone that heard you speak afterwards and get some reactions from them?
Yeah. This older couple came up to me, said I changed their impression of libertarians. So they were happy to have me there. And they came up and said that personally, and they're supportive of the Democrat nominee. And I saw them comment the same thing on his post, that when he posted his live stream of the event. So that was cool. There's a small libertarian group there at Gettysburg College. I talked to them a little bit, along with a few other people that came up and talked to me, all pleasant and happy. And, through some of my comments or whatever, I heard little gasps, like talking about, fund students, not systems. And then others, when I mentioned, they talked about was the election was stolen. So that topic came up, and I spun it towards, it wasn't stolen, but, third party candidates gets the shaft all the time and get kicks off the ballot. And really, we need to reform our election system to like ranked choice voting, and got a lot of people nodding their heads onto that. So, and introducing, ranked choice voting to people for the first time too. So got good responses on that. So overall, no one came up and said you were horrible or spit on me or anything like that. So that was good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, I think most people don't realize the massive hurdles we have to go through getting like orders of magnitude more signatures, like thousands for our candidates, compared to like a really tiny amount for anyone who's trying to get in the primaries for the D's or the R's. And on top of that, you need like 2% at least to maintain the ballot access. So, people might say, oh, voting for Libertarian doesn't do anything, but to make sure that we can stay on the ballot in the future elections.
Yeah. And my whole goal of that debate was to hammer those points and let people know, hey, this is what goes on. Because in Adams County, when I was collecting signatures, a good percentage of them never had an idea what a libertarian is. So I'm introducing people to a new philosophy, and in getting those people involved, or at least have the idea that something else is out there other than the two Republican options. So,
I was just gonna. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, Neil. Go ahead.
No, I think after all this, I think I far exceeded my goals of what I wanted to do with this campaign.
Yeah, it seems like you got a lot of buzz for sure. So, Regina, anything you want to dive into from that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel like for like a libertarian candidate, that's almost part of the. I mean, there's a lot of uphill battle, but that's got to be one of the harder things is that you're almost in that very tight time frame have to almost give a libertarianism 101 or just educate people as quickly as you can without it, you know, diverting from the debate, because obviously you want to hit those points and you have a limited amount of time, but you also want to make sure that if people have never even heard of the Libertarian Party before, that they almost understand that there is a third option, or I mean, obviously there's more than three, but um, there's a different option rather than just going with dumpster fire A or tornado B. Like there's actually a nice medium.
Yeah, it very simplistic. A lot of people say this: don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. That's the easiest way to put it, and obviously you can go deeper than that. And unfortunately, freedom and liberty nowadays has a as seems to be bad, and that's unfortunate because obviously people have been trained to want to live in a society where they got training wheels and can't take personal responsibilities. And obviously with the MAGA crowd, where their I feel their type of freedom is about me, all about me. And as libertarians, we're completely different. And I like to say, I like to take the "Don't tread on me" flag and say, and change that and say, "Don't tread on anyone." That's what it's really about. And you know, it's tough because people are reliant on government nowadays, and like I said a little bit ago, no one wants to take personal responsibility for anything.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. But I do feel like that's where right now the ground is prime for libertarians, because I think we're seeing right now in the climate the how too far to either side is dangerous, and I think now people are craving just that sense of normalcy, in the sense, and I feel like returning that autonomy, back to the citizens, which is like a lot of what we promote. I think they're ready to hear that, so hopefully you'll get more couples coming up to you and saying like, hey, like, tell me more.
Yeah, de-escalation can be achieved through decentralization.
Yeah, and that's the uphill battle, trying to change people's minds, and it's got to start local and start kind of winding that back and kind of introducing these ideas to people again, and train the thinking. It's not going to be this generation. It may get worse before it get better, unfortunately. But like with my campaign, I'm doing this to lay the groundwork for whoever comes after me or whatever, or who I help train next after this, and introducing more people to libertarianism in Adams County here. So, and even with my campaign, one thing I learned was that the Republican right now has been in office for 16 years. He has been opposed maybe 2 or 4 times, and it's always been like a 60-30 split for him to win. So Democrats don't even bother winning. And when I decided to run, there wasn't a Democrat running. And during primary, he jumped in for a write-in vote, saying he's doing it for women's choice or whatever. But I didn't ask him or whatever, but I have a feeling he jumped in just because, knowing that I could help pull votes away. Because again, during my signature gathering, so many Republicans were sick of him and just being not giving any other choice. So, come election here in a couple days, I'll be interested to see how many votes I actually pull. I've had one Republican in Adams County here that is chairman of some council, whatever, endorse me, and pushing me to people who are sick of the incumbent. So it'll be interesting to see what I wind up with a vote total.
Yeah. So jumping off that, is the race heavily favored Republican, and has it been that way for some time? Like not just this race, but in past years, this district?
Yeah. Like I said, he's been an incumbent for 16 years. I think there's been only 3 races where Democrat has actually tried to challenge him. And like it's been a 60-30 split each one of them. So it's heavy red district where I'm at, and it's going to be interesting because, like I said, nobody, people either vote or don't vote, and they have no other choices because a lot of times, they may be Republican and they're sick of the incumbent, but they're not going to vote Democrat just for, their feelings or whatever. And hopefully I give them another choice to say, hey, I align with Dan a little bit, and I also align with the Democrat a little bit. Maybe they're okay with voting for me to, try and, so they can vote and feel good about who they vote for.
Yeah, and something else you touched on that I think it's important we dive into, because that's what we don't need to confine ourselves to just what the R's and D's are talking about, but it's certainly one of the things that they are talking about a lot this cycle is the abortion issue. And I think something that libertarians bring to the table that makes us unique is decentralization and how that can play into it. So when somebody asks you about abortion and what's your stance on it, and how it applies to this race, what do you tell them?
Obviously, that is a touchy subject, but I don't feel government should be legislating people's bodies, and that is a choice between a doctor and a woman. And unfortunately, it's become such a political football, and it's just people want to tear each other apart for it. The one thing I do kind of follow up with that is I don't think the government should be promoting it, subsidizing it, and I think we need to look in ourselves as why people are cheerleading it, saying it's a natural and healthy thing to do, whereas it should be kind of a last resort and not be championed like it is in some spheres. So it's a touchy subject. I've had people ask me straight up, and I said, yeah, it's a choice that has to be made between a doctor and a woman, and they just turn around and walk away. Want nothing to do with me. But
well, one thing that if it was coming up and I was talking about it, one thing I would say is that certainly the federal government shouldn't be involved with it, and it should be left to the states, if not the localities, to decide. And that applies to virtually all the issues that we talk about, and that's what I mean. That's what I meant earlier when I said that decentralization is something that can reduce the tensions of the culture war and a lot of the political issues, and put it to a point where you can have what you want in this area. It doesn't even have to be just the whole state; it could be the different counties or townships or what have you. So that would put it in a position where somebody in Adams County doesn't have to subsidize abortions for people in Pittsburgh. It may not be their perfect solution, but it's still something that I think they would agree is better than the status quo.
Yeah, and that's definitely a step down from a general one-size-fits-all edict from the federal government. But ultimately, it should be pushed down to the individual. But I mean, that's what this country is founded on, as far as having 50 states and all making up their own rules and all kind of doing their own thing to see what works and kind of have the good solutions bubble up to the top. And, we're probably to that point where, with the abortion issue, that's probably the best way to go to kind of, see what works, I'm against, the far left side of it up until, almost birth in some instances. And then on the right where there's no, no options at all. So I think as a nation and individual states, we got to find a happy medium and again, see what kind of works in the individual states and kind of come to hopefully a consensus going that way from decentralization and eventually, coming to a consensus that people are happy with.
Right. Yep. Makes sense. All right. So, Regina, what else you got for us?
The only other big issue that I've like to kind of pick your brain about is about jury nullification.
I don't know a whole lot about that subject, but I know it is an important thing to obviously promote and have available for juries to be able to nullify what they feel is potentially bad laws and help and not charge people with crimes. So that's one thing I wanted to learn more about and get more involved with in promoting. But I think we need to have more of it. I don't know what the current PA laws is. I think I've heard some mixed things about jurors being told about it or judges being able to tell jurors about it. We need to make sure that is explained to them and the possibility for them to do that.
Yeah, generally speaking, they don't explain it for the most part. They just don't. They don't want to touch it. I can't think of any court in PA that has touched it at all, as far as like including it in any instructions to a jury. With that said, let's say the three of us were part of a jury for a drug charge where somebody was charged with a nonviolent drug crime and they took it to trial and we were their jury. Even if the law specifically said, you possessed more than, X grams of some illegal drug, we could just say, no, we don't think this person should be charged for nonviolent offense. So even though strictly speaking, it's against the law, we as the jury are essentially nullifying it in this case, and then they wouldn't be charged.
And we need to do a lot more than that, more of that, I think, especially with how more and more laws are being introduced into our lives and being more and more restricted and being criminalized for everything. We need to use all the tools in our tool chest and nullify a lot of these things.
Right. So ideally, if I'm not sure about this either, but if there's not, there should be more discretion to allow the instructions from the judge to include jury nullification and perhaps even mandate it. That's one time I would use. That's almost the one time I'd use the word mandate in a positive context. But in this case, that might be something that should be included.
Yeah, or included, or just, I guess it comes down to us being able to, inform people about it in these situations with elections and, having it part of our campaigns like we are doing Defend the Guard and introducing that to people, because the average Joe has no idea what that is. And I probably really didn't learn about it myself a little bit, probably within the last few years, just hearing more and more about it, being involved in the Mises Caucus and kind of learning the ins and outs of some of this stuff.
All right. So are there any topics that we did not cover, any big issues of yours that you want to touch on?
I think we covered everything. talking about debates, that was big in kind of my goals for this campaign, and just introducing people of Adams County to libertarianism, and making sure the people in my county are representative. There are over 300 libertarians in my county. So, and I was the first libertarian to run in any office. So, I was glad to be able to light that torch, and start, learning the ins and outs, and being the first one to run a campaign here and out of the county, and then come next cycle to be able to, help the next one to run the next campaign. I think we've got a good group with the state party, the candidate support group with BJ and Allison, and all of us kind of working together to learn what we need to do to help with the next cycle, especially next year with the municipality.
The municipal elections.
Elections. I wanted to say cases, but that wasn't the right word.
Right.
But yeah, so help locally there, and then come next state rep cycle, either I'll run again, or if there's someone else that wants to step up, we're ready to help push them along, and kind of hopefully get some libertarians elected around here.
Yeah, next year we'll be interviewing hopefully lots of local office candidates, so stay tuned for that. Any final thoughts of any sort then before we close out? Neil?
No, I think I got all my thoughts out.
Okay. So why don't you tell people how they can contact you, your website, give us all your plugs.
Yeah, so my website is neil4pa91.com. My Twitter is also neil4pa91.com. I'm constantly checking my emails and on Twitter, resharing, all sorts of stuff, so I can be contacted through there, and be reached if anyone has any questions about my campaign, or just anything in general, if they need help figuring
It's
something
the number
out.
4, right?
The number 4, yeah.
Okay, just like your tag. Okay.
Yeah, just the tag on the screen there.
Okay, so that should pop up on the screen momentarily. There you go. Neil for PA 91. All right, and I got another one for you. Yeah, thank you for making the effort, Neil, from not just us, but the audience as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a great message that, you're putting out there, is for people who are maybe on the fence about, how much they want to dip their toe in the political waters. But, I think it's great for you to keep talking about your experience, just to kind of help the next person. I feel like that's maybe something that separates us from the other parties, is they're maybe not as willing to kind of pull everybody to the finish line.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was apolitical before finding Gary Johnson, and here I am running for office. And like I said, an introvert, and not really one to put myself out there. And you can't change yourself unless you push, go outside your comfort zone. So this was a big thing for me to kind of push out. And I know, as far as libertarians go, they're not always the best communicators, and hey, you got to start somewhere, and start doing it. And you're not gonna improve yourself if you don't step outside that box.
All right. Yeah, I think everything you just said is true to all of us here to some extent or another. Just working through it, and getting better along the way.
Yep, that's for sure.
All right. So thanks again, Neil. Just stick around for a minute, and I'll close out here. All right. So thanks again to Neil for coming on. Now, I know I said this last time, but this should be the last candidate that we have on, at least from the 2022 cycle until after Election Day. So the only endorsed candidate that we did not get to interview was Fabian out of Lancaster, Fabian Asia. He's also another good candidate. We just weren't able to interview him, unfortunately, but we've interviewed the rest of our endorsed candidates. So go back in the archives through the last like 5 or 6 episodes, and I'll have a lot of our candidates on there. Any final thoughts, Regina, before we sign off?
No, just vote gold 22, baby.
Yeah, we'll have in the show notes the link to sign up for Election Day volunteering. Don't forget to go to lppa.org to re-up your membership of the PA State Party. You don't even have to be in PA if you want to just support the party, but you do have to be a PA resident now to vote the convention. So thanks, everyone, and have a good night. And don't forget to take human action.